Over the last several days, weeks, months, we have seen the left start pushing for more and more extreme measures of gun control in light of recent shootings that have taken place. And I have notes. I'm not just reading off of a sheet, but I just want to make sure that I stay on track for this video. A couple of politicians who are Democratic presidential candidates, they have put forth some pretty extreme comments about what they will do, is what they say, about what they will do as far as gun control if elected as president. And one of those candidates, Beto ORourke, like his ratings are terrible. He doesn't stand a chance of becoming president. He's basically just doing whatever he can to try and stay relevant in the race. But I have a quote that I'm going to read, and this is from Saturday, August 31st in Charlottesville, Virginia. I want to be really clear. That's exactly what we are going to do. Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government. So Robert is saying that he will initiate a forced federal buyback, because it's as if they bought them for us in the first place, or that we bought them from the government. A buyback program. He will put in place a forced federal buyback of AR-15s and AK-47s. This guy doesn't have he doesn't have a clue. Another quote here: "It's unclear whether the United States is ready for a presidential contender who, as a teenager, stole long-distance phone service for his dial-up modem, wrote a murder fantasy in which the narrator drives over children on the street, and mused about a society without money." And that's from Reuters. That was a report that they put out about him, and that has to do with some of the stuff that he did in his past. This guy, in my opinion, he's absolutely just so far left, and he's from Texas. Everybody thinks that Texas is like the gun mecca of the United States, that everybody's a gun owner and this and that, and it's really not. You know, you have a bunch of regressive leftists that are, I don't want to say taking over, but you have people that are moving there from, and he didn't move there from somewhere else, I don't think. But you have a lot of people who are moving from very left-leaning states and trying to implement their laws and whatnot in Texas. His campaign is basically just stemmed from gun control. That's all that he wants to talk about in his campaign anymore. What type of gun control laws is he opposing? You know, it's the mandatory buyback of assault weapons. Let's talk about Joe Biden a little bit. Former Vice President Joe Biden. A quote from him. "And we're talking about loosening access to have guns, to be able to take them into places of worship. I mean, it is absolutely irrational. It's totally irrational," Biden said. "The idea that we don't have elimination of assault-type weapons, magazines that hold multiple bullets in them, it's absolutely mindless." Okay, so Joe Biden wants to ban firearms and magazines that hold multiple bullets. I mean, that's damn near every firearm used for hunting or any other purpose, sporting or personal protection. That's any gun. Just about any gun uses a magazine or holds multiple bullets, even revolvers. A lot of people don't take that into account. So he's talking about, wanting to make he's saying that it's absolutely mindless that anything other than a single shot is legal. And then he goes on to say, it's no violation of the Second Amendment. Well, it absolutely is a violation of the Second Amendment, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, probably those of you watching this video right now. Biden's extreme gun control push, if ever enacted, would effectively ban the overwhelming majority of handguns and semi-automatic shotguns and rifles, and many hunting rifles which use magazines. Another reporter asked Biden if there could be any compromise with Republicans on gun-related issues, to which Biden instantly said, no. None. None of this. I think this is no compromise. This is one we have to just push, and push, and push. So he wants zero compromise on this issue. And he wants a federal gun buyback program. The Second Amendment doesn't say you can't restrict the kinds of weapons people can own, Biden said. You can't buy a bazooka. You can't buy a flamethrower. Well, you can buy a flamethrower. You can buy many different models of flamethrowers. They're legal to own. Bazookas, no, you can't just go out and buy a bazooka. But you can buy a flamethrower. You can build a flamethrower. We won't get into all of that. As I've touched on in another video, what exactly do they propose to do with this forced federal buyback of firearms? What about the people who don't participate, who don't comply? So we have people talk about, well, there's no gun registry, and then others who, well, there is a registry, and registration leads to confiscation, flat out. It absolutely leads to confiscation. And if you fill out a 4473 form, that is a registry. Dealers are required to keep those records for 20 years. Your 4473 form that you fill out will stay on file for 20 years. That is so that the FBI can trace that serial number back to the original purchaser, you. That is registration. So they know, the government knows every firearm that you have bought in a quote-unquote legal manner, even though face-to-face transfers are legal. The transfer through a dealer via 4473, that is what most people deem to be the appropriate and legal method of purchasing a firearm. They know what you have. They know what you bought at the very least. So I'm assuming in a forced federal buyback, there would be a period of time that we have to comply. This is actually happening in other places right now, even here in the United States. You have a specific amount of time to comply, which means turning those firearms into your local constabulary, your local police department, or whatever. So what happens after that period of time? Another question, who's funding that? Oh yeah, it's going to be paid for by our tax dollars, which we already pay in. So is that in essence us buying us compensating ourselves with our own money to give our property away? Being forced to do that? So what happens after that period of time? And you haven't turned anything in, yet you have firearms registered to you through the 4473. Chances are you would receive a letter let's move past that just a little bit. Let's say we're done with grace periods. We're done with the time frame to turn anything in. The government will not just knock down your door and seize your property. That's not how it would most likely happen at first. As dumb as a lot of people fantasize the government to be, they're not dumb enough to want that amount of bloodshed of American citizens on their hands. So imagine having all of your bank accounts frozen, having your credit cards frozen, having every aspect of your life frozen, being unable to access your money. You can't buy anything. Imagine that. That's probably one of the methods that they would use to put pressure on people to turn in firearms or prove that they no longer have them in their possession. And that brings about another problem. Proof that they are not in your possession. It'll be extremely hard because you have people who will, if they haven't already, will take firearms and hide them. They'll hide them in their homes. They'll hide them on their property. They'll bury them. I mean, that's been a constant thought among a lot of people, is burying guns. But as was said to me a long time ago by someone whose opinion I greatly respect, if it's time to bury them, it's time to dig them up. So, and I don't think that we're necessarily to that point. I don't think we're to that point at all. We still have the ability to affect legislation. We won't get so much into that. So what I'm getting at here is the fact that the left, and notice that I'm not calling them liberals, because that's not what liberalism is. Liberalism is not this regressive leftist ideology. They are leftists. They are being more open about their plans, their intentions to disarm the American people, and everyone is sitting idly by watching it happen. The NRA has been really good at one thing over the past many decades, and that's compromise. The NRA has been really good at compromising away your Second Amendment rights. Yet they claim to protect your Second Amendment rights, but they've been really good at compromising them away. The NRA has been involved in damn near every major form of gun control that's happened in the last 70, 80 years. Look at the Hughes Amendment, banning machine guns. The Gun Control Act of '68. The NRA had a hand in those compromises. And let me explain to you exactly what these compromises are. Let's say you bake a cake, and I'm the government. I'm the government who doesn't want you to be able to defend against my tyrannical intentions. So I come along and I say, hey, that's a nice cake you got there. That could feed a lot of people. Give me half of your cake. Give me your whole cake. However much of it I want. So you compromise. You compromise to give me half of the cake. I take my half and I leave, and I come back a little bit later and I'm like, man, that cake was really good. You still got half that cake left. I want the other half. Well, you make a compromise with me to give me half of what you have left. So I take that now quarter and now I have 75% of the cake. You are left with a quarter of it. And now my friends are coming along, and they're wanting part of your cake. And they want you to compromise. They want you to compromise to give them some of that cake. Pretty soon, you don't have a cake left, and you're wondering what the hell happened. So that's one of that's kind of the situation that I believe we're headed towards with firearms, especially if these people continue to be elected into political positions, into office, where they have some kind of control over this. They're going to continue to take and take and take. It's not going to ever be a sweeping ban on ownership or confiscation. It will never be a sweeping, all-inclusive ban. It will be a chipping away bit by bit by bit. Probably not even in our generation. Maybe in the generation after us or the generation after them, I could see firearms being something that the United States doesn't really own a lot of officially. We all know the old rhetoric of only outlaws will have guns if guns are outlawed and all that. We know that, and we understand that. But American citizens owning firearms is something that's ingrained in our culture. It's ingrained in our history, and it was a huge part of the founding of this nation. And a lot of people are ignorant to that fact, or they just don't understand it. So let's talk a little bit about how the government or taxpayers will afford this buyback program if that's what they choose to do. There are over 300 million firearms known to be in circulation in the United States. There are roughly 327 million citizens living in the United States. So you literally have approximately one firearm per citizen of the United States. That's over 300 million. How are they going to compensate people for that many guns? What compensation will they be offering? $100, $200 per firearm? Would it be based on the types of firearm? As far as the amount of let's just say AR-15s and AK-47 type rifles. We don't really know exactly what those numbers look like today. There are some rough estimates, but it's a huge amount of guns. A buyback program is just not feasible. It's not feasible on a federal mandated level. It's absolutely not. And for Biden and O'Rourke to think that it is it just shows their ignorance. It shows their ignorance on the topic. Neither of these guys have ever probably had any kind of a conversation with anyone in the quote unquote gun culture, the gun community. They're very single-minded in their beliefs, and they're unwilling to take a look at hard numbers and statistics. You're a lot more likely to be killed in a car crash or be hit by a drunk driver than what you are to be killed in a shooting like that. It's a very, very minute percentage of the population that it happens to. And I mean, I don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but and I'm not trying to devalue these people's lives or lessen the impact that it's had on the country. But when you take into consideration the amount of people who own firearms versus the amount of people who are murdered in such a way, it's absolutely ridiculous to try and push laws on those of us who are law-abiding citizens for the crimes committed by others. And that's exactly what it is. It's, this person committed a crime, so let's punish all of the people who didn't commit that crime. All right, I have a couple more topics coming up that I want to discuss with everybody. Not in this video, but stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button, and let's get some conversation going on some of this stuff.